welcome to the IISS Simultaneous Special Session 3 on Cooperative Maritime Security in the Asia-Pacific. My name is Evan Laxmana. I'm the Shangri-La Dialogue Senior Fellow for Southeast Asian Security and Defense, and I will be your chair for this evening. So before I go into the synopsis and the speaker bio, a few housekeeping notes. For those of you who have not read the instructions earlier, let me say that for you to be put into the queue, please put your name card into the machine and press the button, the speaking button, which will put you into the queue here, and I will control who will speak. Secondly, I should also note that there will be 3 simultaneous translation. Channel 1 is English, Channel 2 is Chinese, and Channel 3 is Japanese. So, in terms of the session, it's, I think, entirely clear for all of us in the room that the maritime theater of the Asia-Pacific region faces numerous security challenges, from illegal fishing and maritime disputes to the strategic importance of seabed mining and critical underwater infrastructure protection. A more robust cooperative framework involving maritime law enforcement agencies, naval forces, and other stakeholders is becoming increasingly crucial. So this special session will discuss how security cooperation could be strengthened to tackle emerging surface as well as subsurface challenges across the maritime domain. Today, we are very honored to welcome 5 distinguished speakers to the panel. We have Admiral Sir Tony Ratican, who is Chief of the Defense Staff of the UK, Ricardo Montero Allende, the Undersecretary of Defense of Chile, Lieutenant General Le Quang Dao, Commander of the Vietnam Coast Guard, Admiral Suguchi Yoshio, Commandant of the Japan Coast Guard, and Rear Admiral Hu Gangfeng, Vice President of the National Defense University People's Liberation Army. So the speakers will speak first from my right. Admiral Suguchi, please. The floor is yours.
Hello everyone, my name is Yoshio Seguchi. I'm the Commandant of Japan Coast Guard. I'm pleased to speak to you today. I'd like to give you an overview of the Japan Coast Guard and highlight the importance of the rule of law for Coast Guard agencies. JCG was established in 1948 to ensure the country's maritime safety and security. We are the only organization in Japan with a comprehensive mission, authority, and security capabilities. With over 14,000 personnel, 476 vessels, and 98 aircraft. As a maritime law enforcement agency, JCG uses patrol vessels and aircraft to guard territorial waters and EEZ, crack down on illegal fishing and illegal drug trafficking, and respond to piracy and suspicious vessels. JCG has always been a non-military agency and does not carry out military mission. Japan's national security strategy says that the role of JCG is essential to the security of the country due to its coastal geography. The strategy also stresses importance of developing the Coast Guard capabilities, strengthening cooperation with the Japan Self-Defense Forces, and enhancing international cooperation with the foreign maritime law enforcement agencies to improve Japan's security. JCG and JSDF have maintained close cooperation under their respective roles sharing MDA information, and conducting various training exercises to respond to any situations, including search and rescue, natural disaster relief, anti-piracy measures, and response to suspicious vessels and gray zone situations. As maritime issues become more globalized and diverse, cooperation between maritime law enforcement agencies and related agencies, such as navies and maritime police, is beneficial in overcoming challenges. Using these capabilities and assets in a combined manner is highly effective. However, we must be thoughtful with issues regarding national sovereignty or interests, which can easily escalate into conflicts involving the use of force or armed intimidation when the status quo could be altered. In resolving security challenges, we must never escalate into armed conflict, nor abuse international law to infringe on the rights and interests of others. We must claim and act in good faith within the framework of international law and seek to overcome challenges by peaceful means. For example, in Japan, JCG is primarily responsible for responding to gray zone situations, whereas JSDF responds when situations are beyond JCG's scope. Each country has created or is creating the best framework for law enforcement agencies and naval forces to deal with various situations according to their security policies. Coast Guards are the first responders and frontline actors tackling maritime threats. That's why we must be guardians of the rule of law. So the role of Coast Guard in advancing the rule of law is even more crucial than ever. To uphold, maintain order based on the rule of law, and to prevent situations from escalating, it's essential to strengthen Coast Guard capability worldwide. At the same time, it's also important that all stakeholders work together to overcome maritime security challenges. Thank you very much for the opportunity to speak to you. I look forward to a fruitful dialogue. Thank you.
Thank you, Admiral. Mr. Allende?
Muy buenas tardes a todas y todos. Good afternoon, everyone. I want to thank IISS for the invitation and for incorporating a perspective of the Latin American coast of the Pacific into this session. I will start by introducing the Chilean standing in the Pacific and our focus on the South Pacific, followed by 3 challenges related to maritime security in the sub-region and some proposals on how to generate a stronger cooperative maritime security. Chile is the southernmost country in the global south with a 3-continental presence. This condition comes from our geographical position in the American continent, our sovereign right in the Antarctic territory, and our proximity to Oceania from our island territorial in the Pacific Ocean, like Rapa Nui, which some of you may know as Easter Island. The above, in addition to our coastline of more than 8,000 kilometers, shape our broad vision of the Pacific. The people of Chile have been historically linked to the sea. It is a part of our identity as a nation and a key component of our global projection. This is why free navigation in maritime routes, the safety of maritime communication lines, the sustainability and development, and in general, the respect and application of international law are essential for our country, especially in these times. Chile's projection to the South Pacific is part of what defines us as a country. This area is a priority for the national defense, as it brings together unique challenges, responsibilities, and opportunities. The area of search and rescue responsibility corresponding to our country is the 5th largest in the world, including border with those corresponding to the French Polynesia and New Zealand, pointing to the need to work with partners in a coordinated manner. Chile is a country inserted into a globalized world and therefore global process, and conflict in other regions may affect us. We are attentive and work to mitigate such effects and contribute through diplomatic mechanisms. Now, in the South Pacific sub-region, there are particular security challenges that we must address, like transnational organized crime, TNOC, illegal fishing, and the effect of climate change. TNOC is probably the biggest and most complex threat to the security and stability in Latin America. In recent years, we have identified its expansion to other parts of the world, affecting maritime security in the South Pacific. For instance, during the COVID-19 pandemic, we saw an increase in drug trafficking through the sea due to the closure of land borders. Thanks to the interaction between countries from the Eastern and Western Pacific, we have faced and tackled some of these cases, but we still have a lot to do. A second challenge is illegal, unreported, and unregulated fishing. This threat openly violates national and international law and undermines the conservation effort in the sea, causes economic damage and can put food safety at risk. The security and conservation in the ocean is a main priority for our country. That is why 43% of the exclusive economic zone is a marine protected area. On that note, the better protect the resources in the vast
cooperative frameworks on which maritime security have delivered tangible outcomes. Many incidents at the sea have been resolved peacefully. Numerous maritime accidents have been addressed. Many fishermen have been rescued in a timely manner. The organized transnational maritime crimes have been effective counter. As a result of overall maritime security situation in the region is generally stable, enabling further growth of blue economies of countries. Vietnam Coast Guard fully recognizes the role and importance of the sea and oceans and the security challenges in Asia Pacific. Over the past year, we have consistently and proactively implemented Vietnam national laws as well as international maritime laws and treaties to which Vietnam is a party. Vietnam Coast Guard has signed bilateral cooperation agreement with maritime law enforcement agencies of 9 countries in the Asia Pacific. At the same time, we also put forward initiative measures to promote cooperation among law enforcement agencies of countries in the region. A notable example is our international exchange program, Vietnam Coast Guard and Friends, which we host every 2 years. Distinguished delegates, looking ahead, maritime security challenges in the Asia-Pacific are predicted to grow in scale and complexity. Therefore, I'd like to offer the following 5 proposals. First, it is essential that every nation should engage with a constructive political will, strictly abide to the international law, with the 1982 UNCLOS as the foundational framework for all maritime activity. Continue to foster cooperation in accordance with international law and domestic laws of each country. Second, maritime law enforcement agency should regard as a bridge of peace. We should work together to establish a maritime law enforcement information sharing network in Asia-Pacific region. This would provide a direct link among contact points for early warnings, vessel operation data, timely and effective IUU fishing prevention, search and rescue coordination, and crime suppression at sea. Third, we should further elevating and improving the effectiveness of both bilateral and multilateral mechanisms, such as putting forward more feasible, impactful initiatives and can align with the varying capacity of broader range of participating countries. Fourth, we must enhance training, cooperation, capacity building, and experience sharing, especially in the area of IUU prevention, countering piracy and armed robbery, smuggling, maritime environmental response, and maritime search and rescue. Fifth, promoting delegation exchange and joint activity to deepen mutual understanding and trust, which are the foundation for more effective and reliable cooperation. Ladies and gentlemen, the Vietnam Coast Guard remains committed to being a trusted and proactive and responsible partner in the collective effort to build a safe and secure, stable and sustainably developing Asia-Pacific region. Thank you for your attention.
Bevan, and good afternoon, everybody. It's good to be back at Shangri-La, and it's a privilege to be on such a diverse panel. My remarks involve 3 themes. First, in this era of contest and competition, when strategic stability is under threat, nations must still cooperate, and especially in the maritime domain. Second, even as we cooperate, responsible nations must stay true to their values and interests. For the UK, NATO first does not mean NATO only. A free and open Indo-Pacific and the primacy of freedom of navigation matter to countries everywhere. My third point is about confidence. These are worrying times, but Europe is stepping up. Our alliances are strengthening. New partnerships are forming. The tectonic plates are moving. And when like-minded nations combine, they can draw on vast reserves of economic, military, and diplomatic power. Turning to my first point, I think everyone recognizes that we're in an era of renewed state-on-state competition. But unlike the Cold War, it is not so neat and simplistic as to separate the world into different blocks. Nations will continue to trade and cooperate even as they compete with one another. This is particularly true if you take the broadest definition of security to include health, climate change, technological regulation, and other transnational challenges. In the maritime domain, cooperation has generally been to the fore. We saw that in the years of counter-piracy operations in the Somali Basin. European naval forces working in proximity to those of Russia, China, India, and the United States, whether through formal or informal frameworks or unilaterally, but all in the same space, working toward the same goal. On Thursday, I met with chiefs from the Five Powers Defence Arrangements, one of our oldest partnerships in Southeast Asia. At Shangri-La, I'm fortunate to have meetings with chiefs from many other allies and partners. Sailors, soldiers, aviators have a natural affinity with one another that transcends politics. This can prove vital when it comes to avoiding miscalculation and managing escalation and de-escalation amid cluttered and contested waters. Militaries have a special responsibility to ensure the lines of communication exist alongside government and diplomatic channels. That is a particular obligation for responsible nuclear powers. That is why I visited China last month to meet with my counterpart, General Liu. And these things do not happen lightly. They reflect the very highest governmental agendas. And they are always done in a way that is true to our values and interests. My second theme is that at the heart of British defence policy is the recognition that our security and prosperity is tied to the rest of the world. We are anchored in Europe. Russia poses the most acute threat. NATO will always be our foremost commitment. But our national interests do not stop at the Suez Canal. Britain is a permanent member of the UN Security Council, a G7 economy, a maritime trading nation, and this year marks the 5th anniversary of Britain's status as an ASEAN dialogue partner. Upholding the UN Convention on the Law of the Sea, and with it the principles of the freedom of navigation in this part of the world matters to us just as it matters in the English Channel. That is why Royal Navy ships exercise the right of freedom of navigation, including in the Taiwan Strait and the South China Sea. We are an active, responsible, and reliable partner in the shared cause of global stability. That is also why the British government has chosen to deploy the aircraft carrier HMS Prince of Wales to the Indo-Pacific this year. And the United Carrier Strike Group is in truth an international carrier strike group, incorporating ships and aircraft from many nations and following in the wake of similar deployments by both France and Italy. This brings me to my final point, the heft that we derive from our alliances and partnerships and why we can be confident. These are momentous times with a war in Europe and conflict in the Middle East. But just as momentous is the way the world is responding. Europe is stepping up. Defence spending in NATO is 30% higher than it was a decade ago, and it's set to rise even further, largely because of growing European budgets. Extraordinary conversations are underway on nuclear deterrence, on collective security and burden sharing, on industrial and societal resilience. President Putin's recklessness in invading Ukraine and the moral clarity and physical courage of the Ukraine people has done more than any other factor to bring this about. The woeful experience of Russian forces in Ukraine and the Black Sea and in the court of international opinion is a salutary lesson for any nation that is tempted to view the use of force as a means to achieving nationalistic political ends. In Britain, we are clear that the security construct that keeps us safe is our status as a nuclear power, our membership of NATO, and our close relationship with the United States. And we know we need to strengthen this construct and adapt to a more dangerous age. That includes the need to integrate cyber and space more closely alongside the traditional domains of land, sea and air, accelerating our adoption of uncrewed and autonomous systems to provide mass, lethality and persistence, developing strategic military-industrial partnerships like AUKUS that straddle East and West and benefit our security in the world and our prosperity at home. And above all, harnessing the immense strength that is to be found in our network of allies and partners worldwide. In sum, the domestic and international geopolitics of late has been turbulent, but we should stand strong, hold firm, and be confident of all we can bring to bear to manage these difficult times. Thank you.
Thank you, Admiral. Rear Admiral Hu, the floor is yours.
尊敬的主席先生，首先，请允许我利用最短一点额外。
Give me some extra time, some minimum time to make a necessary response to some content of the previous speech involving China. Firstly, I do not accept the ungrounded accusation against China. Some are just fabricating, reverse black and white. Some are like the thief crying, catch the thief. So the nature is to provoke, split, instigate confrontation, stir up the region. It's against the trend and the people's will, and it will not realize its purpose. Secondly, the original purpose of Shangri-La dialogue is to study issue, not to create problems, to reduce instead of increase differences. We should enhance mutual trust through candid discussion. Thirdly, we are in the same Asia-Pacific region. Share will and wool in the same boat. We have different national situation. We must seek common ground to shelve differences. Now that we are in the age of civilization of the 21st century, we should resort to dialogue and negotiation. In the morning, at the third plenary meeting, President Orta of East Timor has made very good remarks. No hatred, no anger, only cooperation can turn the world better. Respected all the representatives today, ladies and gentlemen and generals. Now, I will share my view from three aspects. First, a current situation. On one hand, the maritime security situation in the region is generally stable. There have been no maritime military conflicts in the region for many years, which had made the region a stable component in the global landscape. And the South China Sea has always been the safest and the busiest area for global navigation and overflight. On the other hand, maritime security in the region also face severe challenges. Certain countries have wantonly formulated exclusive and confrontational cliques, significantly increased their military presence, infringe upon the territorial sovereignty and maritime rights and interests of other countries in the name of so-called freedom of navigation, deliberately support the Taiwan independent separatist forces, severely undermines peace and stability across the Taiwan Strait. Maritime security cooperation in the region is facing severe challenges where not advancing means retreating. Second, China's practice. China's development started in the Asia-Pacific, has benefited from it, also contributed to it. China has always practicing the concept of a maritime community with a shared future and vigorously promoting the regional cooperative maritime security with practical actions. Firstly, we stress on common security and properly handle and resolve contradictions and disputes. China respects the central status of the ASEAN, adheres to handling the territorial sovereignty and maritime rights and interest disputes through negotiation and consultation. China has completed the demarcation of the Babel Gulf with Vietnam, signed intergovernmental consensus documents with Indonesia on joint maritime development, and launched bilateral dialogue on maritime issues with Malaysia. China has achieved full coverage of institutional maritime dialogues with the claimant states in the South China Sea. Secondly, we highlight comprehensive security and make overall plans for both traditional and non-traditional fields. We actively de-escalate and stabilize the hotspot issues in the region, safeguarding the nuclear non-proliferation regime. China and ASEAN had made long-term concerted efforts in combating piracy and terrorism. We have continuously dispatched the Navy fleet to carry out international escort missions, providing safety guarantees for more than 7,300 Chinese and foreign vessels. The Peace Ark Hospital ship has carried out 10 harmony mission tasks, treating over 370,000 patients. We have dispatched Navy ships and aircraft multiple times to conduct maritime emergency search and rescue operations, as well as humanitarian disaster reduction. Thirdly, we strengthen security cooperation and build maritime exchange and confidence-building mechanism. China has firmly safeguarded the security and freedom of navigation, held and attended the Western Pacific Naval Symposium, jointly introduced the version 3 of the Code of Unplanned Encounters at Sea. China and ASEAN countries are fully and effectively implementing the DOC and actively promoting the consultation on the COC. And we have successfully held the 38 times of joint patrol. China has established 2+2, 3+3 dialogue mechanism with Vietnam, Malaysia, Cambodia, and etc. Beijing Shanshan Forum has become a grand gathering for discussing international security cooperation in the region. Fourthly, we pursue sustainable security and promote peace and common development. China has vigorously promoted the initiative of the 21st Century Maritime Silk Road. We have concluded the negotiations on the Free Trade Area 3 version with ASEAN and jointly convened the ASEAN-China GCC Economic Forum. Especially in April this year, President Xi paid a state visit to Vietnam, Malaysia, and Cambodia, injecting positive energy into regional and world peace and development. Third, relevant initiatives. China will uphold the 3 major global initiatives put forward by President Xi Jinping, practice the concept of a maritime community with a shared future, jointly create a sea of peace, friendship, and cooperation. Firstly, we adhere to multilateralism and join hands in safeguarding Asia-Pacific maritime security order. We should uphold the Asia-Pacific governance concept of extensive consultation, joint contribution, and shared benefits, firmly oppose unilateralism, power politics, and bullying conduct, treating the waters in the Asia-Pacific as an arena for seeking hegemony, especially the illegal acts of creating division, obstructing reunification, and undermining the core interests of sovereign states. Secondly, we adhere to dialogue and consultation and work together to promote the lasting maritime peace in the Asia-Pacific region. Specific disputes concerning territorial and maritime rights and interests should be resolved peacefully through friendly consultations by the direct concerned parties. International law, including UNCLOS and the DOD, must be observed. Any practice that stubbornly draws lines without distinguishing right from wrong and deliberately provokes tensions must be opposed. Thirdly, we adhere to exchanges and mutual learning and jointly create a bright future for the maritime areas in the region. China holds high the banner of community with a shared future for mankind. We will uphold the Asian values of peace, cooperation, openness, and inclusiveness, and pursue the Asian security model that features sharing will and will, seeking common ground, shelving differences, and prioritizing dialogue and consultation, so as to create a community with shared future for the region and the community of shared future for mankind. This year marks the 80th anniversary of the victory of the Chinese People's War of Resistance against Japanese aggression and the World Anti-Fascist War. We should firmly safeguard the fruits of the victory of World War II, resolutely uphold the post-war international order. Thank you.
Merle. So we have roughly about 40 up to 50 minutes or so for question and answer, a discussion. I've seen a few questions and a few interventions, but for the first remarks, Admiral Vajour, please, the floor is yours.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I am Admiral Vajour, Chief of the French Navy. First, I would like to thank the panelists for the insightful and fruitful discussion. As a nation belonging to the Indo-Pacific, France takes its full part in ensuring maritime security and freedom of navigation. We are promoting proactive partnership through Indian Ocean Navy Symposium. We were the chair from 21 to 23, and we will take the chair of Western Pacific Navy Symposium after China in 26. But let me state that the UNCLOS Montego Bay Convention has been issued in 1982. It means 47 years ago. And the question we have is that interpretation by nation of the UNCLOS is sometimes really different. And I would like to ask you the question, more or less 50 years after the issuing of the UNCLOS, do you think it is time to review the UNCLOS or to precise some dedicated points, especially about the regulation about seabed and the protection of critical infrastructures? Or do you think that just reinforcing cooperation between nations will be enough? Thank you.
Thank you. We will collect 2 more questions and then we'll ask the panelists to respond. From Brunei, young leader Hazwan, the floor is yours.
Thank you very much, Evan. I have a question for Admiral Radikin, sir, and perhaps also Admiral Hu. A very good afternoon, Admiral. Thank you so much for sharing the 3 themes of your cooperation here in the Asia-Pacific. I would like to ask, in light of the recent strengthening of the defense cooperation between the UK and China, is there any particular area where this cooperation will be going moving forward? Anything that we can expect in the near future? And if there are anything, if you could share anything concrete or any practical steps in the near future. Thank you.
Thank you. From the Philippines, Zaili Pakulba.
I would like to address a question to Admiral Hu. China has repeatedly affirmed its commitment to finalizing a substantive and effective code of conduct with ASEAN. In this context, how does China reconcile this with recent actions, such as the use of force against Philippine vessels, that appear to undermine the spirit of mutual restraint and peaceful dispute resolution envisioned in the COC? Additionally, how does China view the constructive role of extra-regional partners in supporting maritime stability, transparency, and adherence to international law in the South China Sea?
Thank you. So we have 3 quick questions from the audience. I feel like perhaps for all of the panelists, the question from the Admiral regarding it's a time to review the UN Convention on Law of the Sea is certainly an interesting question that I hope all of the panelists can address. And then to Admiral Radikin on the UK-China maritime cooperation, and perhaps the last one to Admiral Hu on the actions of China in the South China Sea and the COC process. Let me first turn to Admiral Seguchi, if you have any thoughts on the first question regarding UNCLOS review.
Since UNCLOS was established, it's been 50 years. Compared to 50 years ago and today, the environment facing the oceans has greatly changed. Whether it should be reviewed or not, let's put that aside, but we need to look into everything that's been done interim to see if there is a need for formal revision.
Thank you. Mr. Allende?
Well, I will say that this is a huge challenge, and it's going to become more complex through the years. So I think we need to be very responsible for this. As I say, for us, the protection of the not just the maritime domain of each country, the general maritime domain is important for Chile. It's the main priority. So I think that a sustainable development must be a goal for all the countries, but it's impossible a solution if we think about it just for ourselves. So we really think that any treaty that can provide us a bigger framework in order to protect the environment and have again, development that is responsible, I think is an opportunity that we must take.
Thank you. Chairman Le, if you would like to.
Về quan điểm của Việt Nam, thì Công ước Liên Hợp Quốc về luật biển năm 1982 có ý nghĩa và vai trò rất quan trọng đối với các cái quốc gia ven biển trên thế giới, trong đó
to littoral states, including Vietnam, for the reviewing of UNCLOS to make it more suitable to the current situation is important, and Vietnam will be very careful in reviewing and suggesting as well as submitting our the content items that is related, so that interest of every countries in the world and in this region will be protected. Thank you.
Thank you, Nicolas. So I would not be a fan of going back and starting all over again. I think that might be quite risky, quite chaotic, create all kinds of opportunities for even bigger arguments. I would be a fan of banking all that we've got, and that is agreed by everybody, and trying to extend that even further to get even more signatories. And I can see that, can we then try to deal with the points that are really at issue, and can we either refine or resolve those particular points, and can we make a bigger effort to get after those issues before before they fall into a more difficult space where you then start to get into conflict. So I think if that's the spirit of what's behind your question, and it's a good point that as we're approaching 50 years, then can we approach it in that manner? And then on the question about the UK and China, it may be language, and it's not meant to be pointed. Particularly when I'm sat next to the Admiral and he had to suffer me providing a talk when the Admiral was at the National Defence University, and so we were reflecting on that last night. But if you're referring to my visit to Beijing, it was all about establishing military-to-military channels and communication. It wasn't, and I don't mean this to be, it wasn't about an ambition for cooperation. It was about something much more basic of ensuring that we have communication. And as part of that conversation with General Leo, we both thought it appropriate that we should keep those conversations private. But I hope he won't mind me saying that part of the theme of that conversation when we're talking about the UK operating in this region was a reinforcement that when we operate in the region, we do it in a very transparent way. It's something that we are really comfortable with because we see ourselves as operating under the rule of law. and we are doing activity that we consider to be entirely routine for a nation like the United Kingdom. So that's where we are. I think it's important that we had that conversation, but that's just some refinement of what it actually means.
Thank you. Rear Admiral Hu, the floor is yours.
Thank you for your question. First, I will answer the relations between China and the UK. As East and West civilization important representatives, the two countries have for a long time, we appreciate each other, attracted to each other. Just with me and Admiral Ratakin, we sit on the same table last evening, and today we sit together. UK, the Chinese character yin is related to hero and to handsome, and they are all beautiful meaning. Chinese people, they take yin many beautiful connotation, and we take UK, or in Chinese 英国, we give this beautiful word to the country, which can express the special relations between the two countries and the best wishes. Since the establishment of diplomatic ties, the two countries have been improving our relations. In recent years, we have marked many new achievements and inject positive energy to a turbulent world today. This year marks the 80th anniversary of the anti-fascist war and the 80th anniversary of the establishment of the United Nations. The two countries have the permanent members of UN Security Council, and we are all independent major power. We are the important creator of the post-war order and also the safeguarder. We should strengthen unity and cooperation and jointly safeguard the UN authority and status, and safeguard the international trade rule and law and the world economic order, and practice true multilateralism, just like the Chile commander have said. We should safeguard true multilateralism. Just like Admiral Ratakin said, international situation, when it's more complicated, and the US, UK, and China should even make more correct strategic choice and become the reliable force in maintaining the international order and promote the economic growth of the world and lead the multilateral cooperation. Thank you.
Thank you. So for the next round of questions, I'll try and take maybe 4, and then we'll have the panelists respond again. From the young leader and from Japan, Riho Aizawa.
Thank you very much for this opportunity. So some analysts have suggested that a future conflict could begin with an accidental issue or accidental incident at sea. So to all the panelists, what efforts are most needed to prevent such accidents from escalating into a broader conflict? For example, do you see the development of communication mechanism, especially between Coast Guard agencies, as a critical step? Because while military-to-military frameworks like CUES, code for unplanned encounter at sea, or mil-to-mil bilateral mechanism do exist, but Coast Guard to Coast Guard arrangements seem to be less developed. So I do appreciate any ideas for preventing accidents from escalating into a broader conflict. Thank you.
Thank you. From the United Kingdom, Richard Lloyd Perry.
Thank you. Question for Admiral Radakin. You said that although it's NATO first, it's not NATO only. So I wanted to ask you what you thought of the remarks this morning by Secretary Hegseth, where he said he would prefer it for European nations to stay in Europe and concentrate on the defence of Europe. It's also been reported that Elbridge Colby has told UK officials as I understand it, that this isn't really a moment to be sending aircraft carriers out to Asia. Given that there's a war in Ukraine, in Europe, and that military forces are overstretched anyway, don't they have a good point there? And then a very quick question for Admiral Hu. How do you feel about this British aircraft carrier coming to your region? You said that Britain has a very beautiful name in Chinese. How do you feel about this powerful ship not so far off your waters? Thank you.
Thank you. From China, Yuan Ma.
Admiral Radkin, thank you for your very informative speech. My question is about security cooperation mechanism. As we all know that now there are many different security cooperation mechanisms in Asia-Pacific region. However, when looking at history, we also can see that sometimes misunderstanding and confrontation happened because of the lack of effective dialogues among different mechanisms. So I was wondering that, in your opinion, how to make all these different security mechanisms working in a positive interaction, and can we establish a larger and more inclusive mechanism in which all current mechanisms can find their position and better work together? Thank you.
Thank you. And lastly, from Singapore, Satish Kumar Chenny Krishnan.
Hello, hi, I'm Satish Chenny from AFP. My question is for Rear Admiral Hu. As you said earlier, consultation and dialogue is important. And based on that, I was wondering, would it not have been better for China to send their defense minister to attend this forum? Hegseth made a bit of a dig that he was here this morning and that someone isn't referring to China. So any comments on that? And just one last question. Do you think Hegseth's tone and that the message that the US will play a stronger role in the region, will that reduce or raise tensions here? Thank you.
Thank you. Perhaps since there's a few questions to both Admiral Radican and Rear Admiral Hu, maybe we start first again with the other panelists regarding the general questions for all of the panelists, which is how to prevent accidental incidents at sea. Admiral Seguchi, if you have any, yeah.
As I mentioned earlier, it's important to deal with situation calmly based on international law, but that universal value set, the idea of maintaining maritime order based on the rule of law, this has to be a commonly held view among the nations, and each nation has to have the law enforcement capabilities that's able to execute that. For that purpose, it's not enough for one nation alone to act, so it needs to be done within a bilateral or a multilateral framework, and best practices should be shared among them so that they can have a common mindset with regards to value so that they can act. In the case of Japan, we not only have bilateral frameworks such as this, but regional as well as global Coast Guard summits that we have been organized. And so within the frameworks, we work on building the necessary relationship in order to have that commonality in terms of values so that we can assist each other to achieve results.
Thank you. Mr. Allende?
Thank you. Well, I think the main framework must be the international law, but I think we need to do more and do it better. I think we need to open the conversation at a different level. We need to talk at the political level and to the military level. and must be not just bilateral meetings, it must be multilateral meetings. And and I think this dialogue and this meeting, it's a very, very good example. We came here, I know that it's an effort for all the authorities and all the military authorities too, to spend 3 whole days here talking and listening. And I really think that this is a good exercise, because when we met each other, when we start a conversation, that's open a channel. And that at some point could be an opportunity. So what we are working today is not just sharing impression. We're trying to listen what everyone else is trying to say to us. And that I'm quite sure that it is the main responsibility that we have. Because again, at some point that could be, or that could make the difference. A call, met someone here during the meeting, have a conversation, have to an open dialogue. So I think that the formal relations are important, but personal relations are important too.
Thank you. General.
Ở Việt Nam rất
We agree the point of the commander of the previous speaker, that from the Vietnam perspective, we want to be together with another country to maintain its peace and stable for this growth of economy and the social, especially it's maintain its peace and stable of each country. To solve the problem on the sea after collisions on the sea, our perspective is resolving by its respect the sovereignty and especially the law, and especially the UNCLOS 1982 and also the laws of each country. And we also respect its agreement, especially on the bilateral and multilateral. Every year, every country, we have the MOU to sign with each other. Especially for the country have the law enforcement agency need to educate for your laws enforcement agency to respect another force. In Vietnam, we have a quotation: make something big thing to the small thing, and make the small thing to the nothing. So that is the relationship that our relationship in the sea is peaceful and is stable.
Thank you, General. Admiral Ratigan.
So, thank you, and if I take the sort of the first question and the third question together, because they sounded very similar to me. And maybe my first point would be, can we, yes, there are some areas where the tensions are high and people are right to be concerned, but can we be really careful not to catastrophize? So incidents might happen, but the idea that tactical incidents happen and that they then suddenly spiral and they evolve to bigger conflict and another way to war and so on, I just reject. I don't think. I think there are people that love to do that spiraling out of control and comment on it, but I would give some reassurance to this audience that I think that nations are much more aware of those risks and they try to manage them at the time, and I don't think that it works like that. But on the point, do we need some additional mechanisms, and might we try to strive for those? I do accept that that's something that might be warranted. And I'm so old that I can remember I was serving at sea in the Cold War, and when we had those mechanisms in place for how we deal with Russia. But in order to put those mechanisms in place, well, firstly, you need to have some very clear communication. You need to have a political frame where you have the authority to then start to have the conversations, where you then come up with some rules and procedures to just help to manage where you might have differences, whether it's under international law, or you might just recognize that there's a risk of miscalculation, and therefore do you come up with specific rules as to how close you will be between each other, particularly with military evolutions. How do you manage your flying? How do you manage your sonar? How do you manage some of your other capabilities? So those are mechanisms that have been used in the past, and we could definitely have a debate as to whether or not those might be helpful these days. And then on to the question from Mr. Lloyd Parry about the carriers and European carriers in the Indo-Pacific. I think to me there's sort of lots of different layers where I would disagree with you. So the first one would just be a philosophical one. The idea that somehow the world is neatly configured into these nice blocks of geography and there isn't the interconnectedness is not something that we recognize philosophically. And you've seen that the war in Ukraine is a terrible war in Europe, but at one level it's relatively contained in a geographical sense, but its impact is global. Its impact is around energy prices and what that has meant, food prices, and some of the most poor people in the world have suffered the worst in terms of what that means for them. And it was Jens Stoltenberg who talked about there's no such thing as regional security these days. There's only global security. So I come at it that way. The second one would just be the straightforward sovereignty. I take my orders from a UK government, and we're a P5 nation, we're a nuclear power. The government's highest priority is economic growth, and therefore in a region that has 40% of the world's GDP, and that's increasing, and with a country that is fortunate to be the 6th largest economy in the world, and is also fortunate to have a whole raft of partners and allies in this part of the world, I think I've got instructions from a government which are very similar to the last government, which expects the UK to be in the Indo-Pacific. And there are a whole raft of other reasons why we should be here, diplomatically, culturally, but to just see it through the narrow lens of an aircraft carrier, I think is not correct. And it's some of those other big things, like being a dialogue partner within ASEAN. It's also about being in CPTPP and what that means. So there's a sovereignty, UK national interest question. That's not to be dismissive about our relationship with America and what that means. But I may have heard Secretary Hegseth differently, because I think he said yes to European carriers being in the Indo-Pacific, and he reflected something that matched his speech, and which I know that Admiral Paparo really welcomes, and that is whether it's an Italian or a French or a UK aircraft carrier, it adds to this broader tapestry of Western powers and their focus on the region, and that might present some dilemmas for those that are uncomfortable with us being in the region, and some of the other language that Secretary Hesketh reflected. And then I come to some straightforward practical points. Europe is not bereft of aircraft carriers. There's a French one, there's an Italian one, there's another British one. There are American ones that are in the area as well. So that's a sort of starting point. The second one, we have no plans to use our aircraft carrier in the Russia-Ukraine context. And I don't think that we have any expectation that Russia-Ukraine is going to suddenly erupt into something that is pressing us with our aircraft carrier. And if you say, well, actually, we're a stressed military and so on, the marginal cost of sending an aircraft carrier is £75 million. Because all of the things that we're doing, embarking an air wing, the real journey that we're on, which is to declare the UK as being a carrier nation again and at full operating capability, we would have to do in Europe with those jets. And we probably have to go to America to do the highest level exercises called Red Flag, where you really test your 5th generation capabilities. And on this occasion, we're going to a phenomenally sophisticated exercise that Australia has developed called Talisman Sabre, that fully allows you to then test your 5th generation capabilities. And there aren't many places in the world that you can have that operational prowess. And then my final point, which might be an amazing insight from an admiral. Ships float and move, and that actually they go to places, and if they need to, they can turn back and return. And you're talking about 6 weeks. That if I look at the other parts of the UK Armed Forces and their readiness, the time it would take a brigade to fully move from the UK to just Eastern Europe, and never mind the time it would take a division to move from the UK to Eastern Europe, then I'm really confident that the aircraft carrier could join the other aircraft carrier that we've got in Europe. So it's not really something that I'm sympathetic to, and it's not quite the weightiness that people, I think, are inferring, that somehow we've drained Europe and we're in a vulnerable position.
Thank you.
ありがとうございます。風翔さん。
As for the UK aircraft carrier to this region, this is an interesting question. I'm willing to answer this question. As a man also used in Navy uniform, I'd like to focus on the military perspective to discuss this question. First, how can we view this issue? Navy fleet or Navy ship is the most mobile service. It is very mobile. It's the feature of this service. So in the ocean, the mobile deployment or exercise is a basic nature. Only if we apply or deploy it well, the ocean covers 70% of the world. Then the Navy ship navigate on the ocean. It can safeguard peace, promote friendship, just like the 15th century's China's ancient general Zheng He He led the most powerful fleet and went to the Indian Ocean for 7 times. He promoted the spread of advanced technology, promoted friendship with other countries, and received the best wishes from other countries. So I feel it is not strange, not surprised, and it's no big deal. Second, how we think about it. Just like Admiral Radakin said, Navy ship navigate on the ocean, especially to the near sea or far sea, to near other countries. They take quite a risk. It may cause some misunderstanding, miscalculation, or even cause some friction. Even if, just like Admiral Radakin said, maybe at the beginning it has no bad purpose. Just like some war broke out in the region, you feel surprised. It is unexpected. But in the logic sense, your military force, once sent there, the risk will definitely increase. This reminds me of a book written by the University of California professor in computer technology. His name is Julia Paul. He is the scholar of the U.S. Science Academy. He has written a book of why. The core opinion in his book, the cause and effect, is how differentiate human and other species. That's how human evolved into an intelligent creature. It's the basic cause and effect. So from sending the Navy ship to a very far place or the near close water of other countries or enter the territorial water of other countries, it may inevitably contain some risk, lead to some severe situation. There's the possibility. So that is the effect. So it is a logic of cause and effect. Thirdly, how can we deal with it? I think if we analyze well the cause and effect, we should to eliminate the risk fundamentally in the air and the sea. Firstly, the purpose is to safeguard peace. We should not provoke or violate international laws or infringe upon others' countries' security, order, and stability. Not to provoke other countries' sovereignty, security, and developmental interests. Secondly, technologically speaking, we should strictly control the frontline military activities. Just as I have mentioned, the air and the sea activities, we have some international rules. China also actively promotes and signed the the third version of the Western Navy. These rules we should strictly comply with, that we can stop the conflict or friction. In one word, every serviceman or experts or even civilians should embrace a vision of building a community of shared future for mankind and a maritime community of shared future and in Asia-Pacific region. This is the responsibility of our times to everyone. In our historic book or in some TV works, we can see the World War I and World War II. That is miserable experience for mankind. So we should never forget such misery. We should make joint efforts to build peace and make efforts. Thank you.
Thank you, Rear Admiral. So we have only about 11 minutes and I got about 11 questions, so that seems unlikely that we'll get through all of them. So I apologize if I cannot get to everyone. But what I'd like to do is perhaps gather just only 3 last questions, and please keep it short if you can, 2-sentence max, and then we'll have all of the speakers a chance for one last time to provide very short responses and concluding remarks for about a minute or so. So again, please keep it short and no more than 2 sentences, please. From Japan, Atsushi Okudera. Hey?
Thank you so much to Admiral Fu. Thank you so much. And as you mentioned, that China has not threatened the surrounding countries, and also the freedom of navigation has not been maintained all the way. But if we listen to the U.S. and Philippines, we listen to the different story. So in order to bridge the gap, the dialogue itself is quite important. But unfortunately, this time, we don't see any dialogue with the U.S. or other nations. So I'm afraid, just as that the gentleman mentioned earlier, could you let me ask once again? This time, why the China didn't send the defense minister to this Shangri-La dialogue, and what do you think the importance of the dialogue with the United States or other nations like Japan or other Asian countries? Thank you so much.
Thank you. From Indonesia and from the Young Leaders Program, Gatra Priyandita.
Thanks very much, Evan, and thanks to the panelists for the remarks. A question to all the panelists. Admiral Radakin spoke earlier about the importance of recognizing cyber-related risks in the maritime sector and domain. Can members of the panel offer your thoughts on how the cyber threat environment in the maritime sector has evolved, and whether this has also shaped thinking in the Coast Guard or the Navy in your countries about the maritime cybersecurity nexus? Thank you.
Thank you. From Singapore, Olivia Xiong.
Thank you. Yes, I'd like to follow up on the gentleman to my left's question as well, in which you did mention that China is here to have dialogue and consultation, and that a remark by Secretary Hegseth that seemed to make reference at the Chinese defense minister not being attendance at the Shangri-La dialogue. Also, I'd like to get your comments. China and the US have spoken about wanting to uphold peace and stability in the region. Is there a message to the other countries in the room on how you see that happening, given what it seems to be heightening tensions between China and the US? Thank you.
Thank you. And I apologize again if I couldn't get to everybody's questions. So for all of the speakers, we'll follow the same order. And if you could please keep your final responses and concluding remarks to 1 minute, please. Admiral Suguchi.
With regards to cyber matters, communication on the seas has seen great advances in terms of technology, using satellite and so on. But this issue is not something that can be resolved by Coast Guard agency alone, but various relevant agencies within Japan needs to come up with cybersecurity measures, and that is what Japan is doing.
Thank you. Mr. Allende?
We have a lot of questions in just a few minutes. Thank you very much to IISS for the organization and for let us show our perspective from Latin America.
Thank you. Chair Oh, so you're right? Oh, okay. So, perhaps Admiral Radic.
I don't have any question.
So thank you. On the cyber question, I think there's sort of 2 or 3 elements from my mind. So one is the cyber threat it's a threat for all aspects of our kind of way of life now. And we've seen that with some attacks on UK industry and how the levels of disruption against the retail sector. So I think for any sector, it's an issue. And so it applies to the maritime sector, and especially in terms of our supply chains and how we go about our business. And then I think there's an added dimension for the military. When you look at the operations that we conduct, then we need to have an assuredness that we can defeat some of those cyber attacks, and that's something that we need to get even stronger on. And then to the question, I'm not, again, the final question, I'm not too sure that I would agree that I would jump to that there's heightened tension between China and the USA. Again, I think that for all of us, it's about being responsible nations, it's about being transparent, it's about following the rules that we all acknowledge, and being really strong in how we go about that, and playing down the catastrophizing, and that actually there's a heightened tension because of speech A, which is on the back of speech B, and so on. I'm very cautious about those commentaries.
Thank you. Rear Admiral Hu, the floor is yours.
I will answer focusing on one question. We always think that the Shangri-La dialogue is a platform for all sides to discuss the Asia-Pacific security cooperation. So China attached great importance to this platform. We have for many years sent the delegation to this dialogue. Actually, every time we sent the delegation on different levels. This is completely a normal work arrangement. It will not affect our the explanation of our national defense policies, ideas, and the communication with others, or enhancing mutual trust. Objectively speaking, today I'm entrusted by our side to express our ideas. I think everyone may hear clearly our true thinking. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Rear Admiral Hu. Certainly, I think today we've heard a very strong set of diversity of the maritime security challenges. I think the importance of the diversity of perspectives on those issues, as well as the diversity of partnerships and relationships that we seek to build to address those challenges. But hopefully, we also focus on a constant rule of law at the international level and in the maritime domain. So thank you very much for coming. Please give a big round of applause to our speakers today.